Hello everyone, this is David with 3Design. We're going to take a look at a Baguette Eternity band style project. This one it could be a little tricky for a lot of people to figure out. I'm going to try to simplify it as much as possible. I want to thank Jeannie for the idea for this video. She had some issues trying to build one herself, so we gave her some advice and we're going to create this project to help out. It's not a very parametric ring as far as building it fully parametric where you can change one thing and the whole thing updates, but I'm going to give you a lot of little advice to make it easier as we go. So let's jump into it. We're going to start with a ring size builder. And again, because this isn't a fully parametric ring, you probably want to start with the ring size of the ring you're building. If you're going to build a line of these, we'll talk about that at the end a little bit. I'm going to do a US size 8. The top plane I don't need, so I'm going to turn that off, and we'll leave the starting point at the bottom. Not really an issue in this ring, so just need the ring finger size. Okay. Starting in a sketch, it doesn't matter which view, we're going to draw our profile shape or our cross section for the sweep, and I'm going to start with just a rectangle, like so, from the center, and we'll go ahead and size it, and I want this to be 5 by 2. My baguettes are going to be 5 millimeters in length. I want it to be roughly the same size as my band, or my band the same size as the baguettes. And we're going to go ahead and make it rounded with about a 0.25 fillet or radius and validate that. Now I'm going to modify this shape a little bit just to give it a little more design. We're going to go ahead and convert this rectangle to a NURBS, and then we're going to move some points using the scale tool. So what I want to do is first of all hover over the curve to show its points, and then doing a marquee selection from right to left. Select just those points in the corner, and then use the scale tool just to kind of push those together a little bit to give it more of a rounded look. So it's not just a flat one. This point here is kind of off. We're going to do the same thing with those 2 points and just kind of smooth that out a little bit. And then I'm going to do one more set of points, these 2 here, scale again, and push that in a little, just again to give it that more tapered look. So we could have done this multiple ways, but that's one way you can just start with a simple rectangle and modify it to a new shape for your section. Go ahead and exit the sketch, select the ring size, switch over to the solid module, and sweep. We're going to add our section and turn on precise. We don't need precise here because I'm using the ring size builder. It's already rebuilt. So we'll go ahead and check our orientation. We want the tapered part out, so that's good. And check the vertical alignment. It looks like it's going to be vertical bottom in this case, so that it's outside the ring, of course. And choose your metal and validate. Okay, so now we're ready to start placing our baguettes. So this is the tricky part that we run into, and the design that we're doing calls for alternating baguettes. I'm going to use a 5 by 5 and a 3 by 5, and every other one will be alternating. So that's where this gets difficult. If they were all the same size, we could have just placed the baguette, repeated it. There's many ways that could have been done. I could have used a channel tool, duplicate on curve, all kinds of different ways. But the challenge that Jeannie came up with was she needs to alternate them. So let's do that. We're going to start in the jeweler's bench with a stone. And my first stone is going to be, as soon as it builds it, a baguette. That is 5 by 5, which happens to be the default here, so that's simple enough. Validate that. And then instead of placing this using the transform inside the stone, we're going to add a move, rotate, scale to it. That way we can edit it later easily. So back to the solid module, add a move, rotate, scale, and we're going to move this into position. And right now we're just guessing at the height, so just pull it up in the Z. I'm going to say 11.4. Right about there. Now that's where we're going to have to adjust it. Once we see how many stones fit in here, they may not fit with that height, so what we can do is adjust them. So the other thing I want to do in this project is rename a lot of these items so that we can find them, because we're going to be going back and tweaking them. So we're going to rename this move rotate scale to height 5 by 5. So we know that's the height for that stone that we're going to adjust later, and validate that. Okay, we're going to repeat that for the other stones. So back to the jeweler's bench, another baguette. This time it is 3 by 5, and validate that. Let's switch back to solids, add a move rotate scale, and we're going to name this one height 3 by 5. And we're going to also move that to the same amount, 11.4. And validate that. And now selecting that new stone, the 3 by 5, and I'm going to do that from the tree since it's buried inside here, and we do have it labeled. We're going to grab the height 3 by 5 move rotate scale, and then we're going to add another move rotate scale because we're going to rotate this using along an axis, which locks you out of the move and scale portions. We want to do a separate one, so we're going to add another move rotate scale to this. Move rotate scale to this. We're going to name this one rotate 3 by 5, and we're going to go ahead and rotate it. Okay, so we're going to change the kind of rotation to a round axis. You're going to get this warning: move and rotation, or move and scale will be locked with this type of rotation. That's fine. Hit OK, and then choose your axis. This is going to be around the OY, and then we're going to simply rotate it a little bit around that axis. And we're going to leave a little bit of a gap between them. We may have to adjust that again once we get them all placed, but that looks good for now. Validate that. Okay, so now we can do our circular duplication. And we're going to select both stones, circular duplicate. Again, change the axis to the OY. And we see here there's 10 stones by default. That's way too many. They're not going to fit. Now, if you need a specific number of stones, you're going to have to play around with your heights and rotations and everything to get them to fit. So I know that 9 should work pretty well here. They're still overlapped a little bit, so that's where we'll go back and tweak this. So for now, we'll go ahead and validate that with 9, which gives us 18 total. Okay, so we can see with 9, they don't quite fit perfectly. There's less gap between some of these. So that's where you want to adjust your heights. So we're going to go into our history, looking for the circular duplication. We have our height 5 by 5, double click it. And I've already practiced this one, so I know it's going to be 11.6. Okay, so you'll just have to, you're using different stone sizes, different amounts, things like that. You'll just have to tweak these numbers. Once you get them set, it's pretty easy. Just make little adjustments to the height until they will fit properly around each other. So don't forget, we also need to change the height of the 3 by 5. So open that up, and we'll also do 11.6. And recalculate. And we're getting closer here. So we see that now they all kind of fit, but the gap between the two stones is not quite even. I'm going to go into my rotate 3 by 5 and just kind of tweak that a little bit and recalculate. And let's see. My heights are not quite where I want them to be. Let's go with the height on the 3 by 5 just a little bit higher. Go 1/10 of a millimeter up, and we're almost there. So this is the fun part, is just getting them even. And let's check our circular duplication here. 360, everything looks good there. Let's keep adjusting our heights. Let's go up maybe 11.8 for that one, and 11.9 for that one. Let's see how that looks. All right, getting closer. Let's just check our rotation and push that back in just a hair. All right, almost there. I just want to, adjust that rotation for the 3 by 5 just a little bit back the other way. Okay? They don't have to be mathematically perfect, but you can get them pretty darn close just by tweaking it. So now we've got our alternating stones even. So again, like I said, that's the toughest part, but like I said, if you go ahead and line them up this way, get them set in there, get the number that you need, then you can adjust it from there. So if you go too tall with these, let's say you are trying to fit more stones, that means your overall diameter is going to be much larger, stones are going to be higher, you may go back and adjust the height, just scale your band as well to match. So everything is tweakable. That's the beauty of history. Whether you're doing something fully parametric or not, you can still use that history to tweak things, and you don't have to do so much pre-planning and math ahead of time. Okay, so the next step, I'm going to save my project, and we'll call this Baguette Eternity. Okay, we want to save that because we're going to do some major booleans coming up, so if something happens, we don't want to start over. So we can go ahead and do our settings for these, the jeweler's bench with the multi-cutters. And I'm going to freeze my ring so I can see inside of it. And for the first tab, I'm just going to make sure that my seat is where I want it and pull out the angle just a little bit so that it's not overlapping those stones too much. And then finally, I'm going to use square bottom. So for the bottom tab, switch over to the pipe bottom and just use the square option. That's it. Validate that. And we've got our cutters. Okay. Now, obviously, you can customize those if you want to do some fancy shapes and things like that. You can play around with the multi-cutter tool and customize it as much as you want. But I'm going to keep it simple for this design. Okay, so we're ready to do our Boolean. We're going to unfreeze or show the curve sweep. Save first, and then select the ring and the cutters, and we'll do our Boolean subtract. Okay, that should cut no problem. Now we're ready for our prongs. This is where the other big part of this came up. She wanted to do shared prongs instead of just simple single prongs in between each one. So of course that complicates things a little bit more, but again, I have some tricks to make that a little easier for you. So we're going to start with a sketch in the front view. Select the OXZ plane, new sketch. Zoom in a bit on that stone. We're going to draw the path for our sweep for the shared prong around this big stone. We're going to use a symmetrical vertical curve and turn off the closed curve option so we have an open curve. And we're just going to draw about 4 points right here where we want our prongs to be. Okay. Something like that. And I'm going to go ahead and use another symmetrical vertical curve, this time closed, to draw the shape of our prong, which is kind of a shape like that, just about 3 points in here. And that's about it. We're going to be able to tweak those curves as needed once we get all these lined up, just like we did with the stones. So go ahead and exit that sketch. We need another sketch for the side view of our prong. So we're going to go into our tree and select the OYZ and do a new sketch on the side. And using just a regular NURBS curve, we're going to draw in where the prong is going to fit into our shape here. So about 3 points, and I have it kind of curved into so that it comes into the shank a little bit. So we want the prongs to be a little wider at the top and then more angled in at the bottom. So again, we'll tweak that as necessary if needed. Go ahead and exit your sketch. Now, here's where labeling is going to be helpful again. So that last curve I drew in the side view, got to rename side view, and go ahead and sketch number 2. We also have the first one here we're going to rename. That's our front view 5 by 5 for the larger stones. And then curve 2 here, just to keep everything organized. That's our prong shape. Okay, so again, we're going to be using all these and selecting them from the tree, so it helps to have them labeled. So what we want to do is select our front view and our side view for our 5 by 5 prongs. And then we're going to do a 3D curve from 2 views. So in the curve section, in the solid module, we're going to do 3D curve from 2 views. So that's going to bend our prong shape to match that side view that we drew automatically instead of having to manipulate the points in 3D space. So if we preview that, we can see there's what we want. Perfect. Validate that. Okay, so now we are going to go ahead and sweep that new 3D curve sweeping, add a section, which is that little shape we drew, and then check the orientation. So on the 3rd tab, looks like I want it 180, so the flat end is up against those stones. Go ahead and validate that, and there's our first prong. Okay, now we can always tweak any of those drawings to make this different. So if I want to widen these prongs or make them a different shape, we can just go in here and tweak them just a little bit and update it. There we go, that should be secure. Okay, and then also I noticed that now that I have them placed, they're not quite going over the stones enough. So using our labeled curves here, I'm gonna go into the side view and then just bring this in just a hair so that it's going into the corner of the stones, so we can notch those and set them properly once we get them all set up, or actually cast. Okay, so now we need to do the same thing with first we need to go ahead and exit the sketch and duplicate these. So we're going to select our first U-shaped prong here, and we'll do another circular duplication. Change the axis to the OY. And we know that there's 9 of these. That's going to match the number of stones. Obviously, if you're using a different number of stones or sizes, you'll adjust that accordingly. Go ahead and validate that. And then what I want to do, I need to do the same thing for the small stone with a little U-shaped prong here, but it's at an odd angle. So that makes it very difficult to work from to do a symmetrical curve. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and rotate all of our stones and our new prongs for the big stone using a move rotate scale. Rotate around axis just like we did earlier for the little stone. Change that to the OY. Okay, now the handle here is a little weird because it's not an even shape, but you just want to kind of get it started so that it's roughly in the middle. And then zoom in here. I'm going to hide my ring for a second here. And then using this line as a guide, we're just going to change the angle. So I'm going to click on the rotation angle here and roll my mouse up or down, depending on which way you're going, and just get this aligned so that the point of that stone is right in the center. Okay, so just like that, we've rotated the whole group, and now we can, let's bring back our band from the tree, and we're going to do a new sketch. And just like we did before, we're going to use a symmetrical vertical curve, open, and we're going to draw in the shape for our other set of prongs. Okay, go ahead and exit the sketch. We need to bend that to match our side view shape. So let's go here and rename this one first. That's going to be our front view. I can type front view for the 3x5. All right, so we know we're going to select that front view curve and the same side view curve we used for the big ones. Select both of those and do another 3D curve from 2 sides. And that looks good. Validate that. And we're going to sweep our new 3D curve, add our section, and check our rotation. It looks like it's going to be 180 so that the flat is inside to match, and validate. Okay. Wow, I got pretty darn lucky here. They're pretty even. Now you're going to see some seams. They're not going to line up perfectly. That's okay. That's going to get polished off. You can also round the tips and all that. Again, I would recommend just doing that in the metal just to avoid any kind of Boolean issues. We just need to get these to go together. Now, if I highlight this group here, before we duplicate this one, you can see that there are some odd overlaps here. So we may go in and add a move rotate scale And I'm going to do a little bit of scaling here. Just kind of get that. If you highlight that, you can see here, we don't want it to crisscross itself too much. And like I said, don't worry about the seams. Those will clean up nicely. They're really tiny once you look at it at actual size. Go ahead and validate that. And now we can circular duplicate our new set of prongs. Again, change that to the OY axis and change the number to 9 so they fit in between. And there we go. Okay, so let's just make sure Boolean's together. You may have to tweak your settings here to get them to Boolean nicely, but if you do that little bit extra scale and tweak them and get them to overlap pretty nicely, they should go together no problem. So we're going to save that and select the, before we can Boolean them, our stones were rotated with the big prongs, so we're going to need to separate those. So we're going to select that group and just do a filter by. Filter by gives us the option by type or by material. We'll just do it by type. And now they're separate. And now we can save and Boolean all the prongs together. Okay, if it goes smoothly like that, great. Doesn't hurt to check it before we start adding this to anything else. So I'll do a polygon conversion. Watch the quick tip video on polygon conversion for checking your files if you're not sure about this. But I always check my Booleans, especially the complicated ones, as I go, just to make sure there's no bad geometry in there. Right, after that calculates, all right, so no red lines, should be fine. Go ahead and cancel that. Don't validate that tool. We don't want to actually convert it. And then we're simply going to mirror that to the other side for the opposite. I'm going to do another save and then Boolean it all together. If it Booleans, you're done. So select here, here, and the opposite side. Okay. Now you might want to hold off on this Boolean operation until you've tweaked everything. Don't try to update any of the history, like the curves and the shapes and things like that, with everything Boolean together. It's a very complicated Boolean. So make sure everything is where you want it, and then we do one final Boolean to add everything together. Again, it should Boolean no problem if you've got everything overlapped cleanly. And you are all finished. Let me hide my sketches. We've got them all labeled. So again, like I said, it's not a fully parametric ring. I wouldn't attempt to adjust the finger size at this point. It's gonna all fall apart on you. If you do want to use this file again to make a different size ring, undo all of those Booleans, keep them separate, and then tweak finger size, adjust your heights of your stones, recalculate everything, and you can reuse it that way. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you next time.